Welcome to our next episode of the 5 Moments of Need AI Matters series. This is Chris King, one of the co-hosts you'll meet throughout the series. We aim to bring order and focus to the AI discussion in and around the L&D world, exploring how it aligns with frameworks like the 5 Moments of Need and learning content management. Throughout the coming months, we will be sharing both expert insights and real-life examples from practitioners. In this AI Matters podcast, Gottfredson and I sat down with Markus Bernhardt, Chief AI Strategist, Consultant, and regular speaker on the conference circuit. Markus likes to be known as the not the silver bullet guy because he's always reminding us that each solution has both strengths and weaknesses. True to form, when we talked, he was quick to remind us that everyone's trying to figure this AI stuff out and no one has the right answer yet. Markus talks with us about AI case studies, how technological advances always start with familiar use cases, and the only way you're going to understand AI is to learn by doing, a message near and dear to our 5 Moments of Need hearts. Today we're joined by Markus Bernhardt, who is Principal Consultant at Endeavor Intelligence, but he's so much more than that. Markus, you're also an AI strategy lead at the Learning Forum and a founding member of the AI Learning Collective and the Chief AI Strategist at the Thinking Effect. But wait, there's more. You're a coach, a mentor, and internationally recognized speaker. We're very happy to have you join us here today. Tell us a little bit more how you got started down this distinguished road that you're on.
Amazing, thank you. And it's great to be here. It's a little bit of a curvy journey, if I might warn you. I started out in the armed forces, in the special forces as an instructor when I was young. So training was through and through what I was used to. I then at university went on to do theoretical particle physics, and that's where I learned my skills around programming and maths. And after that, I thought I was going to use those skills in trading and in finance, but very quickly decided that that was not the world for me and went into education. And so then I did education for K-12 and college, having already lectured and mentored also at university previously, and led 2 education institutions in the UK as CEO myself. So training and education go through and through. And I then started dabbling with neural networks using my maths and my programming background. I programmed a few neural networks myself and experimented with backward propagation and different distribution functions, trying to improve machine learning models, and got my head around that a little bit. I would by no means say I'm a coder, but I've dabbled a little bit and I enjoyed that. And then after my time in education, I joined a startup called Abrism in Cambridge in the UK, which looked at adaptive learning powered by AI. And since then, I've been on the circuit. I'm doing the speaking, I'm doing the panels, and I'm all about utilizing these tools in the way that they should be utilized as one of the tools in the box, but not forgetting about all the good things that we have: workshops, mentoring, coaching, and the in-person stuff. Not only once have I, in some circles, been called not the silver bullet guy, which I thought was a quite charming and nice way of introducing me. So I like that approach. I think it's all about talking sense around these tools and finding the right applications, but being fully aware of the strengths and weaknesses.
You know, what I appreciate about your background, your experience, Markus, is experience. You know, there's not a lot. Everyone in our industry is just stepping in and wondering where to begin and how do I make sense of all of this? And we just learn about something and then there's a new version that pops up and new capabilities. So help us understand kind of where things are and give us some guidance, will you?
Yeah, sure. First of all, AI isn't new, and we always have to say that. It's been around for decades, and we've used it for recommender engines to build skills frameworks. So in our sector and industry, AI tools have been around. But of course, with ChatGPT 3.5 being released, the hype started around the generative AI. And the difference with the generative AI is it generates new things. The good old-fashioned AI looks at patterns, looks at statistics, makes statistical predictions, and helps us in those ways. But the generative AI is just more interesting because we can play with it. And by having given us a chatbot, It was one of the best tools to dive in and just play with it ourselves. So we can totally understand where the craze is coming from. But with all the FOMO that is out there right now, we can also take a deep breath and say, well, look, it's not going at the lightning speed that you think it might be going, because there's been several research pieces of how AI, and generative AI in particular, is being used right now in our sector, and it's mostly for content. The evidence is super clear. People have started doing, and this is very natural, this is not a criticism on my part, people have started doing what they used to do, but utilizing some AI tools to do it maybe a little bit faster and a little bit quicker. So I think we've gone through the content phase, and this is not just backed up by instructional designers and learning designers bringing in avatars, bringing in translations, making up their own images with the DALL-Es of this world and creating bullet points and summaries with large language models. We've also seen hardly anyone venture into a new direction, and those are standalone single-use tools. That's where we are right now. And those standalone tools are making the job maybe slightly easier and maybe a bit more interesting, but the focus is on the content. And we can see this also reflected on the vendor side. Red Thread Research recently came out and said that over the last 2 years, the percentage of vendors that offer content as part of their solution has moved from 27% to 55%. So a really big shift there. Why? Because we're finding it much easier now to do content. I'm making no judgment there as to whether we're doing that well. What I'm saying is we can see that everyone has started doing it and it's more accessible now. What we haven't quite seen yet is what I describe as the transition from content to modality. Modality would be moving away from things we used to do a little bit better to delivering the learning in fashions that are now accessible that used to not be accessible. Be it through conversational AI, the chatbots, the personal tutor, the coach, the mentor, that conversational interaction, or be it through the other part of the duality, as I call it, the experiential, where I can immerse myself in a scenario, in a simulation, in a skills practice. I'm given a scenario, I have to make a decision, I make that decision, and then I get feedback over time with my decision making, how I'm balancing trade-offs. For example, in leadership decisions, we all think we're unbiased and we make good decisions generally, and then we can now get more feedback on how we might be biased towards the organization, towards the team, towards the product, towards the client when we make those decisions. All of those are becoming more interesting. But this is the shift that we haven't quite seen yet. We're starting to see early signs thereof. And the reason we haven't seen that is because we haven't seen many fully integrated tools yet. And in order to move to modality, what we really need is that we can stop using the standalone tools and adding to them to what we're doing, but to have access to several of the tools at the same time, like a large language model mixed with some avatars, mixed with a storyline, in order to create, for example, a conversational environment to practice or debate or be taught. And so that shift is just starting to happen now, and we've seen some very early use cases come through. And that's how I would describe the lay of the land. So I do think there's a point here to make in saying, people are not as far ahead as everyone thinks that the few are. There's been a lot of focus on content, and no one is really running ahead and running away with it right now. Yeah. So it is still a good time to start dabbling, getting started if someone hasn't started yet, and get stuck in.
This reminds me of how all new technology starts out. People use it in the way the old technology was used. I think about like when the first TV shows came on, it was basically a radio program with a camera in front of everybody.
Yeah.
And so it's the same pattern on this one. So I think that's really interesting. And we're at that stage now where ChatGPT has come out with this new omni-channel, multimodal kind of AI model that's probably going to supplant ChatGPT 4. And we're really to that point, Markus, where we can start to see that use case shift from what's familiar to what's possible.
And what's really key there is the multimodal aspect. So far, language models did language well. They struggled with logics. That's why we have the hallucinations, but they did language well. What they didn't do is they didn't do the images so well. And we know good multimedia learning, we need the words and we need the images. And so we were lacking the images. And this is now starting to shift, because with access to images and with image interpretation capabilities, the AI could even bring up an image and highlight the respective bit that it's talking about, following the signaling principle in an explanation, the old laser pointer equivalent in the lecture in anatomy, when they're talking about one small bone and they're pointing out which one on the screen that they're actually talking about. So that multimodal capability is really coming in now. And so that's a very exciting time we're in, because
It really is.
The accessibility to a personal tutor is becoming more of a reality, and this is one more big step towards that.
You mentioned as you were beginning when you were young, and I'm looking at you and going, Markus looks young now compared to me. And in 1984, when I entered the real world of work, so you're still young, I asked a question, and that question changed my whole trajectory professionally, and that is, learning is a means to what end? And the end is enabling people to perform effectively in their work. And I so appreciate your expanding our discussion around where we can move from traditional creating content to creative ways of learning. But for me, what is exciting is the integration of AI into the work, and the integration of AI in terms of helping support people in their work as they perform on the job, and the integration into the tools that we are using as we do our work. You know, that is an exciting part of where I think AI agents can be orchestrated together to do some amazing things.
I wholeheartedly agree. And one of the examples that I've been sharing a lot quite recently, and which will be brought up more and more now, even with the new GPT-4o version, is, you said it there. We can work with agents, and we can maybe even work in a very humane fashion. Imagine that a company is rolling out a new SOP, a new standard operating procedure for their frontline workers. And of course, the SOP is never written over the 100 pages the way that it should be for the frontline worker. So we can now take the SOP, no matter who wrote it and how clever they were and what language they preferred, and we can say, give us a version with only the information for the mid-level manager, give us a one with the information for only the shop floor person, give it to us in language that is appropriate for this kind of business with our products and clients, and maybe even give it to us in the language of the person who we're going to send it to. So now roles and all of those things can be respected. That's the first really boring step, because now you can distribute this to them and give it to them. That would be the old-fashioned version of doing it. But having read that, and maybe even in a team meeting, having had a conversation about it, now imagine that you're that worker, and suddenly Markus pops a meeting in your diary, and you say, fine, I'll accept the 15-minute call. And you go onto your Slack or your Teams, and Markus appears, and Markus is an avatar. And Markus says, hey, how are you doing today? I'm just giving you a quick call to check in with you on the new SOP. Are you okay with it? Or do you have any questions? And by the way, Markus is speaking Spanish because that is your preferred language. And so I go, oh, yeah, thanks for the call. I'm actually quite good with it. We had some good conversations. No, I don't have a question right now, but thanks. And then you put the phone down, or Slack or whatever it was, and that was it. But then 2 hours later, you're chatting to a colleague and you're both saying, oh, what happens in this situation? Well, guess what? You can go back to the Teams meeting, you dial the avatar. The avatar has 24/7 availability, so they will pick up. And you now say, before we start, we can't do Spanish because my colleague doesn't speak Spanish. So can we switch to English? And the avatar says, okay, now we're in English. And then you say, here's the question we've got about the SOP. We were wondering about this little aspect. You have that conversation in 5 minutes. You end the call and you say to your colleague, well, there we are. That's that one. And people aren't imagining is this two-way. People think they get it because they think you click on a link at a certain point in time, and then the AI knows the one directional teaching it should be doing. But what we're not imagining, most of us at least not, I think, is that this is really two directional. and that it is not that you were sent an email with a link. It is much more human than that. It can be a meeting, it can be a phone call, it can be any of the above. And guess what? That's how we humans communicate the best, right? We chat to one another. That's how we're used to it. And now with multimodal capabilities, the AI might even say, let me just share my screen and let me bring up an image that shows the 3 points that I'm talking you through, just so you've got a visual as well. That will also be possible going forward. And now that image doesn't even have to exist prior to the call. If the AI is making 5 points very specifically to the question that this person has asked, not all the slides would have existed in the SOP, but if there is a general flowchart and we're talking about these 5 points, the AI can show a quick visual of the 5 points while talking through them.
Yeah.
And so there we need to really think forward. And this is always why I say, right now we're in this weird situation where many try to help us by saying, start with the problem in mind. And that is unbelievably useful advice, but also misses the point. Because if you're innovating, you have to think a little bit like a 6-year-old in Toys R Us. You have to go a little bit wild and go, oh my God, there's so many possibilities here. That's the other half. And if you bring those two together, you think about your biggest challenges, you think about your biggest opportunities, and then you put your grown-up hat back on and you say, let's compare what is the cost, what is the opportunity, what is the potential ROI, how fast can we deploy this and make a use case and see how well it's working. Then we are that grown-up again who is now strategizing and who says, but let's bring together both those innovative ideas as well as the pain points. And then we can formulate something like a strategy. And that's why I say there's got to be both sides. People are often saying too many are walking through the exhibition floor just with their eyes wide open.
Yeah.
I always say yes, but that's also part of the process because that will spark the creative ideas. You can't just work in that mind frame because then you're going to miss what pain points and challenges you should also be addressing. But we need both right now. So if we keep a balance there, as always in life, a good balance will lead to the best results.
Yeah, one of the areas that we're really pursuing is how can AI actually coach me while I do my work? It's that interaction, right? And we've actually worked through a scenario where I can, in a conversation, say to my coach, AI coach, I don't know how to do that. Coach says, well, who does? I go, well, Sue does. Let me check her calendar and let's bring her in.
Exactly.
It's that kind of coaching, personalized experience that is in the near future, I think, for us, if we'll go there. And as you say, broaden our view in this way that you're talking about.
So we have to have the right frameworks to make that work, though, right?
Yeah.
Well, you do need a good framework to make that work. That is true, especially in a time where the waters are quite choppy and things are changing. But I often point out that before we bring the framework in, we need to have an AI policy in place.
Yeah.
And we need to have a fair use policy in place, because we are still surprised when we go to conferences, when we talk to people, how many organizations still don't have their AI policy in place. I'm very often getting the feeling that it's analysis paralysis that is at work here, where people want something that's 45 pages for the ages, and therefore they're not quite ready to release that yet. But the key thing here to remember is it won't be for the ages, because in 3 months, OpenAI or Anthropic or Google or Microsoft will bring something out that makes you have to edit half of it. So don't think about for the ages. And the other thing that always astonishes me and my colleagues as well, I'm not the only one who's banging the drum on this, is it's sometimes a little baffling that organizations think it's better to have nothing in place than a one-pager. 3 bullet points of what you're allowed to do with AI and how you have to communicate that you're using it, and 3 bullet points of what not to do with AI and how not to use it, and being very clear on that as well, would be a one-pager that propels an organization so many light years into the future. But it's interesting to see just how few organizations still have made that move. And at learning and training conferences, it is still easily the vast majority that raise their hand when you say whose organization does not yet have one in place. So that's the slightly baffling bit, isn't it?
It is. And if we fail to do that, will reap a reward that we don't want.
Right? There are lots of studies out there that show adoption is happening of AI. And if you don't have a policy in place, that doesn't mean adoption is not happening in your organization. It just means you're not aware of it and not having any guardrails set up around it.
And this is particularly interesting because I take these research pieces with a grain of salt, because you don't know why they participate, but there's been a number of pieces that have said the majority of people use it on a relatively regular basis. And of those that are doing that, the majority is still not happy to tell their employer that they're using it. So you are 100% spot on, Chris. People are starting to use this on a regular basis. They're not sharing that because they're kind of not sure whether that's okay. And they also have no policy to refer back to quickly check whether what they're doing is okay and how they might have to communicate. One of the easiest things is that if you produce something and you've used a large language model, that you just say, this piece I made in this fashion, just so that everyone can be aware that you utilize the tool, which is not a bad thing, right? It doesn't take away from your work. I think policies and fair use policies should be on everyone's mind right now. And we're supporting quite a few clients on their journey with this. So the help and the support is also out there. So there's really, from my and many others' point of view, there's no excuse for not having at least that one pager in place.
So thank you for all that you shared with us today and those insights. I wonder, to bring a close to this podcast, you have helped a lot of organizations, learning folks, have a conversation with leadership about this. What's your counsel to them? How can they move forward to help facilitate the establishment of policy?
The necessity is there. And I think the arguments are quite striking to have this policy in place. And even if at leadership level something is still being signed off, then I don't see a reason why a department leader can't at least put some bullet points down of what is not okay, or even say, here it is in writing at the moment, don't use it at all. So that's your starting point. From that point, the conversation can develop. And of course, we respect that in larger organizations, there is a process to be followed and it will take some time. And then on top of that, I think we're in a phase where people are unsure about the tools. And that's the same for everyone. That's the same for me as well. I don't know all tools in detail. I don't have time to research all of this in detail, know how they work, know exactly all their strengths and weaknesses and biases. So what we can do is, when we have the conversation with our leadership, we don't prepare a pitch, we don't prepare a proposal. What we prepare is the answer to all the questions that should be asked, as well as the proposal, so that they go together as an educational piece with a proposal. So when I'm wanting to deploy something in my department, in my learning function, as an AI tool, don't need to even name a specific one now as an example. For any tool, I can say, this is what we're looking to achieve with it. This is how this one works. This is what compliance is already in place. They are maybe SOC 2 compliant, and we have that sign off. You might even include what that means for someone who's not familiar with SOC 2. There are a lot of different levels within leadership where a lot of these finer details will not have been covered yet. And if we don't do the education piece as part of our conversation and proposal piece, then we're causing ourselves trouble and adding to the challenge. Whereas what we should be doing is proposing the solution and giving people the ability to see the pros and the cons of the solution and feel fully informed. So they're not just deciding on a cool new project, they're deciding exactly on what that project means, where the strengths are, where the weaknesses are, and that security has been taken care of.
That's amazing to think about. That kind of framework and that kind of approach I think that is something that all of us can use, since we are in this place where we're learning by doing. So Marcus, you started us off by talking about how everyone's trying to figure this out and no one has the right answers. And so everybody's got to do it on their own and figure things out. So there's no better way to do this than jumping right in and trying it. And I think what you just described was how to propose an AI tool to your leadership that doesn't involve naming a tool. And I love this approach because it really does back us off of kind of the sales pressure and start the deeper conversations with our leadership in how can we implement these tools to get us to that vision that you've so wonderfully articulated with us today.
Thank you. And the other opportunity for the team there is to use those conversations they need to have with the vendors also as an educational journey, because that's where they can ask all their questions and have them answered. Because of course, no one expects them to be experts as either yet. There has not been time for anyone to be an expert. But so while we're doing our homework, we're also educating ourselves. We're also upskilling ourselves. We are doing exactly what we should be doing when we invented this word of the future of work.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your experience, your wisdom, and just brilliant conversation today. We really appreciate your being here and enlightening us.
Thank you very much, Tom. Thanks, Chris. It's been a pleasure. I look forward to many more.
Thank you.
Well, that's it for this episode of the 5 Moments of Need AI Matters podcast series. We look forward to future conversations about how to best put the 5 Moments of Need into practice with artificial intelligence. We welcome your feedback and can be reached on LinkedIn at the 5 Moments of Need or on our website, www.5momentsofneed.com. We hope you're finding these helpful and that you'll subscribe for future episodes. Have a great day, friends.